Hello. Come on in.
Hi, how are you?
Would you like a tea or coffee?
I'm the one that takes a coffee before sugar.
I think there's a seat over here. Give me a seat and I'll get the tea or coffee.
Hello everybody, come in, please find a seat.
Come on and get a cuddle and a cuppa.
With all of us together, it'll be chaotically beautiful. Let us all sit and enjoy the brew and blather.
Hello and welcome to A Brew and a Blather, a community-produced podcast funded by the Great Place Scheme and recorded in partnership with Erskine Arts about the lives of women and non-binary people in Renfrewshire. I'm Jules, this is Frankie.
Hello.
We're volunteers at Kairos Women Plus, and in this series we're focusing on women's heritage. By that we mean how women's lives are remembered. In this series we'll be talking about our experiences collaborating with Paisley Museum, poor houses and poverty in Renfrewshire, the legacy of slavery in Scotland, and finally Section 28 LGBTQ+ education and representation.
We wanted to explore some of the more marginalised voices in Renfrewshire's history, so our focus is not just on Women Plus, but on underrepresented groups more generally, working class, BAME and LGBTQ+ folks, and the documented histories we have uncovered, or more often struggle to find. We believe that documenting the lives of marginalised groups now is the key to a more representative history in the future, so we hope this podcast can contribute to a more representative heritage sector in Renfrewshire and beyond.
Content warning. This episode contains discussions of homophobia and transphobia in schools, so please be kind to yourself and switch off if you find anything triggering. In this episode, we will discuss LGBTQ+ representation in history, both in schools and more widely in popular culture. Members of the Kairos Equalities Collective, Jules O'Brien, Katie Leck and Emma Gale Harper, explore the exclusion of LGBTQ+ people from the school curriculum, even after the revoking of Section 28, which we discussed in our last episode. They also consider how representation in the media and public spaces affects our understanding of our own identities. We're then going to hear Annie reading an excerpt from a biography written about John Marie Campbell, who lived in Victorian Renfrew, assigned female at birth yet living most of their adult life as a man, to provide an example of how LGBTQ+ people have always existed in Renfrewshire, but are often obscured from our understanding of local history, all these little hidden histories around. We will share a list of resources in the description of this episode for folks looking to find out more about LGBTQ+ history and access positive representations of queer folk in TV, books and films.
Hi, I'm the other girl. My pronouns are she, her, and today we're going to be talking about LGBTQ+ history and heritage. So everyone just introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jules. You already know me. My pronouns are they, them and she, her.
And I'm Katie and my pronouns are she, her.
So yeah, as I said, we're going to be speaking about all things LGBTQ+ heritage and history. So yeah, as LGBTQ+ people, being able to find role models in research or history and heritage is absolutely vital to understanding who we are as people. Do you guys think that there's enough representation of queer histories available?
No.
Just love, there's like this little, just like, yeah,
No.
No, definitely not.
Jeez, oh no.
No.
I mean, you grow up thinking that nobody else is like you, or that you're a freak or something like that, and then you get older and find out, oh, there's a whole bunch of us freaks. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you think of like what is available? Do you think there's enough? Do you think there's not enough, or do you think it's kind of like leveling out now? It seems to be getting a little bit better.
Yeah, I feel like it's getting better now, definitely in comparison to, for example, when I was growing up, there was nothing. Really genuinely couldn't tell you about anything that I remember from, being a kid, a teen, even sort of in my early 20s even. I mean, I'm 32 now, so it's only now that I feel like I'm seeing, and it's more available, and luckily, obviously, with the internet now sort of really it's took off since, you know, we were growing up. So obviously the information's at our fingertips now, and it's much easier to search and things, and people are coming together and collaborating and putting it out there. But yeah, definitely not. And before, it's getting better now, but we've still got a way to go, I'd say.
I'd like to think that it's getting better. I've been out of school like 10 years, which feels like a long time, or just over that now. And when I was in school, it was pretty much non-existent. I mean, they kind of flitted around like, oh, gay people exist, and like trans people weren't even on the radar at that point.
No. Yeah.
And there was still so much discrimination like in school, and they didn't really do anything because it was a Catholic school. You know, no surprise there. But as far as I'm aware now, or maybe this is just me looking from the outside in, it's getting better. Like there are a lot more accepting young people, even in schools that are Catholic. Like you're seeing a lot more young people come out of these school systems and be like, oh, I'm okay with who I am. Like this is who I am. Like struggling in a way with their identity because they weren't taught as much in school, but when they get out there into the community, they'll find their own education, which is sad that it needs to be that way, but it seems to be how it's going.
Yeah.
The sad thing about leaving people to get their own education is that it can also leave pathways open for abuse. And you find the same with, you know, with the lack of sex education as well. And people go into, you know, the real world and can be swayed and things like that. God, I saw so many teen pregnancies when I was in school.
Yeah.
Like when I was 13 and 14, people my age, a lot of teen pregnancies. And we got zero sex education. And then talking, the most that we spoke about gay people was we had a little debate in SE in 6th year was on whether we agreed that gay people should be allowed to adopt kids.
Charged.
Yeah,
that was a bit shit because I had already been outed by that point as bi. And one of my best pals was of like 6 years was sat next to me, and she disagreed. And at that point, that was a shocker. I think that was my first time really experiencing that sort of sense of betrayal. But she was like, no, I disagree. Jeez, oh right, wow, never speaking to this person again unless, you know, she changes her views or something. But that was heavy. And then considering that, you know, there's a chunk of the population who are going to be, you know, amongst the LGBTQ crowd, no matter what, you can't change it. You can try, and it doesn't work, and it causes trauma. It just causes further alienation, and both making people think of themselves as lesser and making other people think of them as lesser as well.
Yeah. It's a sort of self-perpetuating cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's yeah. And I totally agree. I've got the same sort of experience with what you said, Emma Gill, you know, Catholic school, and you as well, Jules. Same Catholic school education here as well. And yeah, zero sex education. I mean, I remember being 13 and one of my classmates was pregnant and had to go off to have her baby, and that was just completely, you know, it was totally wild at the time. But I mean, we just didn't have the access to any sex education, let alone any alternative sex education.
Yeah, like if they're not even teaching their straight and heteronormative and cisnormative kids how to keep themselves safe, what hope is there for queer kids in school?
Yeah, except for like those campaigns in the 80s, the ad campaigns like, don't have sex or you will get AIDS and die.
Yeah.
And it was especially aimed at gay men, which was a very, very handy dandy way to make everybody think of gay men as people to be avoided or that they were dirty.
Yeah, for sure. It's, I mean, even, so I'm 32 now, so yeah, out of school a while now, but I mean, even that sort of abstinence education was still, I mean, it was live and kicking when I was at school. And, you know, I could say, you know, sex education for me, I think, was us, you know, being segregated. So like girls were in one room, boys were in the other, and the girls had a TV screen rolled in with this really horrendous video showing, to, promote abstinence, that if not, this is what will happen. I had no idea what the boys were shown, but we were all too traumatised to be asking what they had. But, I mean, it just doesn't work. It just didn't work, obviously. The amount of girls in my year that had kids when we were at school and then very quickly after. I mean, it just doesn't work. Yeah. And yeah, like you say, if they can't teach the heteronormative sort of sex education, what else? Like, what else can you expect for queer kids either?
It's just making everyone in the whole system feel so repressed, especially queer kids, especially those in the LGBTQ plus community. Like, if you don't see yourself in the history you're being taught, how are you meant to connect with it? Like, if you don't see yourself there, how you're meant to be super involved in that? Like, when I was younger, I was really into history, and as I started to realise that I was bi, I was like, why is there no women that are going out with women in this history? Why is there no... And even I had a gay friend in school, I was like, why is there no gay guys in history? Like, this is weird. I never dared to speak up to the history teacher because she was scary in her own right. Like, that going up against the school, like, you knew that there was that sort of... They're keeping things from you, that sort of repression. And that must have just been a whole shebang, a whole thing that they were trying to do.
You don't know whether it's like a blissful ignorance is where the oversight came from, and they're just like, oh, we're straight, there's nothing, it's just this complete ignorance of anything else existing. And it's almost whether it would take someone being on the staff, for example, that wasn't, straight or cis, being like, a point. Can we maybe diverge slightly and perhaps include everybody else would be great. It's mad. I definitely do think like the boom of the internet has made it, easier to get for folk to get information. Yeah. But that's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because you can get so much information, you can also get so much bad information. Yeah. And if kids are having to go out and find this information themselves, they're not going to know what's credible sources and what's not.
Exactly.
They're kids, and they need to be taught how to do this and how to, look for, information in the right places and good places and safe places. And
and if they're even going to find that information at all,
exactly.
Like Frankie was saying, like trans people seem to just, to a lot of cis and straight people, like, oh, they just appeared in 2016. It's like, no, just out of nowhere. It's like, oh my god, trans people, wow,
that's a thing. You're like, what?
Yeah, and then there's this narrative of like, oh, they're just indoctrinating all the children think they're trans, and then it's kind of that backlash to any attempt to make education more inclusive, because it's only a couple of weeks ago when the Scottish Government's guidance came out and there was a headline in the Daily Mail being like, Scottish Government tells teachers to let 4-year-olds change their sex or something. It's like, okay, let's take this back a minute. Yeah. What does it actually say?
Let's unpack this.
Let's unpack it.
So, like, as you were saying, Frankie, about obviously trans and non-binary identities being particularly erased and then apparently just come out of nowhere in 2016. Why do you think this is? Why do you all think that's the case? Why is it just... This is the kind of... It seems like this is the thing, especially the media and society's kind of honed in on now. It's not... They're like, oh, okay, we're fine with the rest of the community, that trans and non-binary people, what's the deal with that? It's like, what?
I think there's like multiple sources, multiple reasons for it. I think for some folks it's about maintaining power, because in the current system that's in place, people who are in positions of power can feel a bit more secure, but then as soon as some other element about it changes, they no longer feel quite so secure in their position of power. And then there's other folks who will find that, they're like, oh, I don't know how to talk to a trans person or what to say or what to call them, and it's like this fear of being shown up as ignorant, and this fear of like, oh, you say the wrong thing, you're going to get crucified, and the kind of the unwillingness to sit in this discomfort that, you don't know everything, but none of us know everything.
You're not expected to either.
Yeah, you're not expected to know everything, and like you can just be like, yeah, I don't really know. As long as it's literally just, you can even say outright like, by the way, I have no idea what to say, and because you've communicated that, like that makes all the difference. It's just that in itself is showing a lot of respect.
I guess respect's totally lacking though, isn't it? Like that, like word respect. It's just I don't know. I see it kind of declining generally. I'm one of these people. It's like, you know, I feel at 32. I'm now like, I mean, where's the respect? I'm an old lady now. Get the blankets out, guys. But it's like I just don't feel like there's enough respect. There's not enough sort of, you know, like you say, being able to sit in that discomfort and being like, actually, listen, I want. How do you need this? Like, what can I do to help you? Like, and it's all very much like, it's just being a human, like, and sort of getting your humanity back almost.
Yeah. And it's not even the case that, like, obviously a lot of people will be like, oh, young people don't have respect, and like all that whole, oh, young people don't know that they're born in that. It's not. It's the older ones. It's the older people that seem to be lacking respect because they're like, oh, I'm too old. And obviously we see the studies that say as you get older you become more conservative, more kind of like set in your ways, and it's these people that seem to have the least respect for young people. So you're seeing a lot of older people turfs going for young people, and it's like, maybe not even just turfs, you know, there's homophobes out there, you know. We've seen a rise in attacks against queer people in general in the UK, and it's
minorities in general,
minorities in general, exactly, and it's often perpetuated by either older people that are ignorant or younger people that have been indoctrinated by this ignorance. So like you're gonna see, you know, the football lads beating on some gay guy because, oh, he's gay, like, oh, I don't want to be associated as gay, like, so I'm going to batter him because he's living his life free, and I feel depressed. Like, how's that guy walking down the street wearing a pride flag's problem that you feel depressed?
It's like that fear of like, well, if you don't stand against them, then, oh, you must be gay yourself, and then the fear that you'll then be treated the way that you've been treating other people. I think that can be a big part of it as well. Yeah,
it's like getting someone else before they get you.
Yeah,
sort of mentality, which is just,
it's a shame.
It's a shame in so many ways. It's wild.
There are records dating back pre-Christian times of trans people who lived and thrived and were accepted in their societies on planet Earth, you know. We've always been here.
Before Western indoctrination.
We always will be.
It seems like there was a lot of people just living their best lives, and then Western colonialism came over there and was like, nope, party over. Only to a gender and
don't like
no
that.
Fun.
There's a man and there's a woman and they should be together and that's it. There's nothing else.
Everything else is taboo.
Also, no religion, no fun, and just, you know, do work. That's it.
Work for people like us. Thanks.
Yeah. Keep making us money, and you know,
keep us in the way we're accustomed.
They're like, your identities that you had before we were here. What's that?
No,
didn't happen. I don't know her. That's not for me.
For sure.
So earlier we were speaking about like culture, and obviously we touched on religion. How do you feel like that can affect the identities and like just how they feel about themselves of like young, especially young LGBTQ plus people? Like, how do you think that can affect them? Like culture and religion and stuff.
Wow. I mean, I don't know. I've not got a lot of, you know, like, all my nieces and nephews are like super little, so they're not in the school system yet, so I've not really seen firsthand of what's happening at the moment. But myself being at school and being sort of a young person and a teenager, I mean, it wasn't there. You can't be something you can't see. And it was this complete shame. I think shame is like the overarching like feeling from it. And it was, I mean, gay or anything remotely, you know, to do with being gay or not normal, you know, normal in inverted commas, that was a slur at school. That was a slur. So there was just complete shame attached to it.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, I don't like that thing, therefore it's gay. And it's like,
oh, that was massive when I was at
Lesbian
school.
was the big bad word when I was at school as well.
Yeah.
The word lesbian meant you were like absolutely just scum.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, good. It's just, I think shame is probably a really big part of it. And I mean, on leaving school, in my class alone, we had a really big sort of school year. My class alone, there was 5 or 6 of us, to my knowledge, that came out after school. Because it was just not, there wasn't the space for it. And you didn't want to then invite that negative attention and that negative energy you're just trying to get through. And like I say, you know, that, oh, that's gay, with anything inherently bad or not, you know, or generally rubbish. That was the sort of slur. So you're like, oh, well, I couldn't possibly be anything. Like, oh no, don't invite that attention.
And then even if you're feeling that, like from our experiences in Catholic school, that good old Catholic guilt that we all know and love.
Keep that on as well.
And then obviously on top of that, there is just a culture of hating and distrust of anything different and out of the ordinary in this country.
100%.
Which is why we've got the name coined on ourselves. Silly Island, as we were saying earlier, and Turf Island is like, that is why this country is the way it is.
Yeah, that's what folks around the world call our country now.
Which is great.
We're known for our bigotry. Isn't that lovely?
Oh,
It's,
I mean,
sad to say. Like, it's really devastating to see that that's the culture we're bringing to the world. It's like, oh wait, we're not loving and like kind and stuff. We're bigots.
Yeah.
Even the people that are chill in the country, even the people that are trying to combat that, like ourselves, we're being drowned out. But hopefully not with like spaces like this, like conversations like this being had.
for sure. I mean, we're swimming against the tide, but someone's got to. Like, we have to try, for sure.
Yeah, I think the kind of the culture of shame and hate definitely extends beyond religion, though, because you can definitely get secular communities that are still queerphobic, and meanwhile, I've witnessed some Jewish and Muslim communities who are totally, and Catholic communities over in Edinburgh actually, who are totally accepting and celebrate queer identities, which is amazing to see. I've got a pal who, like, they're out as gender fluid, and they got blessing from their priest to get married and everything, and they have these deep conversations about gender and sexual orientation and things. And it sounds like, even just hearing it feels like it heals a childhood wound.
Oh yeah.
It's, I mean, that's somewhere over in Edinburgh. That sounds amazing, and I hope that there's more of that around,
sure.
Because I can only imagine what it must be like for kids who get to grow up in that community, being not made to feel shame for an inherent part of themselves. Yeah. That's going to be huge.
It's massive.
Huge.
Like, absolutely massive. That would just be like completely mind blowing now.
Yeah.
I mean, to not have to fight against that shame, to be just yourself and be, you know, totally fine with that, and having to combat it and do so much self-work to then come to a point of sort of neutral.
So much labour and working on yourself. Oh my god!
It's
like, somebody, straight people, please pay me for all the work you've made me do on myself that you haven't had to do.
Exactly. And it's just so they just don't see it, and I just.
Because that's just the default that everyone's like, oh yeah, you're born, and instantly you're like straight and cis.
This is the correct way to be, and if you deviate from that in any way, you are wrong and bad.
Yeah.
So, do any of you have any reflections on what we can be doing as a community and society as a whole to like make queer stories and histories represented? Because obviously this podcast is about queer heritage and all that fun stuff. So like, what do you think we can do for future generations, whether that be community action and education, like Kairos, for instance, and like visibility in the media, TV, books, films, and education obviously plays a part. What do you think we can kind of do? I know it's a big question.
That's good though, gives us a lot to go on, for sure.
I think sometimes changing conversations, because like I certainly don't have the power or connections to influence like the media or anything like that, but I certainly know that within my local community and stuff, I can be visible, which for a long time was a very scary thing to do. But I remember when I was younger, I'd see people who were like clearly gender non-conforming, or like they would be walking around with a little like rainbow pride tote bag, gay pride tote bag and things like that, and something inside me would just be like, oh, yay, you know. And that's something that can be a gift to other people, being visible. And sometimes having these wee conversations with people, or like, oh, did you see that show the other night, and then bring up a show that specifically has like some queer representation in it, and then recommending it to people, because sometimes the best way to learn for some folks is through fiction. You know, what was that? There's that saying about how you read a book and you live so many different lives. I can't remember what the exact quote is. I'm absolutely rubbish at quoting things, but it's you can make small changes that have huge ripple effects. There was somebody who through my dad asked to speak to me so that they could become educated on non-binary identities. And this was even before I was out as non-binary. But basically she this is a grandmother, and her grandkid came out as a teenager and came out as non-binary, and they wanted to learn about it because they're like, I don't know where to start. And I thought that's such a good way to go about it, asking people. Because sometimes you Google it and you get all sorts of nasty stuff from newspapers, and
and wade through all the crap to get the actual useful stuff.
Sometimes you search for queer identities on social media and it's just flooded with like Nazis and things like that. They're talking gay is wrong and gay, it's a sin and all that, you know, really horrible stuff that can make people very frightened for their kids and their grandkids. You know, that's something that I think is a thing that a lot of parents go through when their kid comes out, is that fear of, oh my God, my kid's going to have an even harder life. And so kind of some gentle education, and just drop in wee conversational hints here and there, even as straight people and amongst your straight pals. I can really make big waves. Those little rowboats can become big waves.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I kind of, as I've got older, I have to say, because, like, you know, coming to the sort of realisation in my sort of teens that, you know, I'm like, I'm not straight. I don't 100% know, and that's fine, but I just know I'm not straight. And I think when I got kind of over the early 20s, which is really quite tough anyway, you're trying to figure out who you are and how you work in this world, and sort of getting that bit older, I've kind of always tried to live by a bit of a mantra of be the change you want to see. So, you know, I work for a big corporation, and it's very sort of straight cis sales type culture. You know, it's a bit it can be a bit laddie, it can be a bit sort of it's just sort of Wolf of Wall Street type-esque, you know, with a lot of exciting games thrown in to incentivise people to settle, you know.
Rather that than American Psycho.
Oh, true, very true. But I mean, do you know, great place to work, but really, really, you know, very quite set in its ways, very straight, very, do you know. And I was the one with the massively rainbow festoon desk. And I mean, a lot of them were just like, I mean, is that not a bit overkill? And I mean, I went to town, I'm not going to lie. Like, I was like, I'm not just going to have one, it's everywhere. But I was like, do you know what? We've got a lot of young, sort of really impressionable folk coming and joining this organisation. you know, we're getting apprentices at like 16, 17, leaving school. We've got people from all over coming and like moving countries and coming and joining. And I was like, no, do you know what? I've got, you know, I'm a bit gobby, and I'm like, do you know, I've got the ability now, and I'm comfortable enough in myself, and I've got a voice, and I'm happy enough with where I am in order to try and be that change that I want to see. And I want to let, like you said, Jules, sort of a little sort of nod to, yeah, I'm a safe person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you, and just letting people know that that was there, and they didn't have to feel that, if, you know, if they were anything other than straight cis, you know, conforming, then, you know, there was somebody else there too, so it was okay, because I was already out being the big rainbow festoon, you know, gobshite. That's fine. I'll take one for the team.
We'll
because
bleep that.
But I mean, I was like, do you know, I can do this now, and I feel like I've almost get a little bit of sort of moral duty, obligation to kind of be like, I can. There's so many people that can't, for whatever reason, you know, all over the world, but even in this country, like, feel that they can't be their true authentic selves. And I was like, if I can, and I can make that a little bit easier for someone, then I'm going to do that. Like, I feel like I should.
Yeah.
And like what you were saying about like community groups and things, like even just coming in and, you know, doing a podcast, like meeting up as Kairos Women Plus, doing all the, you know, the different fab things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, if that, it reaches people, and it, that, like you say, Jill, it makes ripples.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be like, oh, somebody will walk past, say, when we've got like Kairos Museum, you know, exhibitions on, and be like, oh, to their pal or their cousin or their niece or their nephew, like, oh, I seen this thing, you might want to go and see it, you might be interested. And it's like reaching out and getting people, like, little by little, and sort of guiding them towards the sort of community spaces that are safe, like you said, Frankie, like safe, welcoming, and just let people be themselves and feel that they can, because they're surrounded by others that are, you know, comfortable now, or comfortable together and being themselves, and sort of spreading that. I just think it's really powerful in that way.
Yeah, I think, as Jules and you were saying, it's that thing about visibility, and obviously through community action like this, and I think that's a great way to kind of round it up. Like, our community action, we are the heritage that we want to see, we are the history that we want to see.
Yeah.
So going forward, hopefully this pops up in a, like, in some LGBTQ plus young person's recommendations, and they're like, this is what I need to see, and that's going to impact their life, and that's what we needed, and now we can be what we needed for them now. For sure.
Even if it inspires other folks to make their own one, talking about their experiences and talking about their own kind of LGBT lives, and because sometimes just talking about it can really open the gate for other people to then start talking about it.
I think that's a great place to round it off. Thank you for joining me, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
The story of John Marie Campbell is a historical example of gender fluidity. John was assigned female at birth, but lived their adult life as a man, travelling and working around Victorian Scotland. We don't know all the details of their life, but we do know that the newspapers of the time took an interest, and the story even made it as far as Tennessee in the USA. John Campbell was born Marie or Maria. We don't know exactly where or when they were born, but we do know that they began dressing in male clothing as they grew up, and married Mary Ann McKenna as John on the 6th of December 1869 in East Calder. They lived in a family home in Kirk Newton with Mary Ann's children, who had been born previously out of wedlock. Married life didn't work out for the couple, and after just 5 months, John deserted the family. John ended up in Renfrew and began residing as a lodger with the Early family on Pinkerton Lane, whilst labouring at the local shipbuilders Henderson, Colburn and Co. John, I quote, won the esteem of all around him by the handy and intelligent manner in which he executed any task allotted to him, unquote. Colleagues at the yard also acknowledged that, another quote here, a more kindly and obliging worker never was engaged in the yard. On the 29th of November 1851, John fell ill with smallpox. A doctor was summoned to the home and insisted that John needed hospitalisation. It is reported that they disapproved of going to hospital and wished to leave the town. The doctor questioned their reluctance to visit hospital, asking, was it because of sex? To which John reportedly replied, yes, and the subsequent explanation was that the supposed Johnny was a lassie. The doctor informed Mrs. Early of this discovery and told her that she must get women's clothes to dress John so they could be admitted to Paisley Infirmary as Marie Campbell. It was at the Paisley Infirmary that the medical officer on duty received a letter from the Inspector of the Poor from Kirk Newton, suggesting that John Marie Campbell might be the person wanted by their parish since May 1870 for deserting Mary Ann McKenna and her children. We aren't able to ask John what pronouns they identify themselves with, or know how they would have defined themselves in a Scotland that now has a deeper understanding of trans people and gender fluidity. The story does, however, illustrate how gender is not a fixed category or dependent on our biology, an early example of a challenge to patriarchal ideals of femininity. Sensationalist news reports of the time show how Victorian Scotland was shocked by a same-sex relationship and gender nonconformity, with supposedly weak and domestic women not expected to be able to live and work in a typically male job, such as John in the shipbuilding yard. This example, amongst others, shows how cross-dressing and same-sex relationships were more common than society would have liked to admit.
Thank you so much for listening. We've been a Brew and a Blether, a Kairos Women Plus community-produced podcast. If you like what you've heard, you can follow us on social media, all the usual places, or you can look at our website, kairoswomen.org, and I'll spell that out for you. It's KAIROSWOMEN. If you have any questions or comments on the series, we would love to hear from you. Please get in touch.
This series was made possible through the Great Place Scheme, a project funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and delivered through Renfrewshire Council. The music you've heard is by Lakbay Lahi, the song Pag-ibig, which means love in Filipino. Love is central to our ethos at Kairos, and a lot of love and volunteer time goes into all of our projects. Thanks to the guests and volunteers who give their time to make this podcast happen.